If you ask parents who've made it through the newborn trenches what made the biggest difference for them, more often than not, they're going to say their village. But what is the village? How do you find it? And when you do, how do you make the most of it? Today, we're getting answers to all those questions and more from Dawn Ellis, founder of Gather Well, which organizes support groups for expectant moms, new dads, and other community offerings in the Boston area. She's going to share her experiences supporting moms for more than a decade. And you'll hear what's remained true for parents across all that time and what's changed and what that means for parents today. This is Getting Started with Baby, the podcast that brings you practical tips, loved products, and lived experience from parents who've been there, brought to you by thestarterset.com, a service focused on helping parents find just the right things at the right time, personalized to their family. I'm your host, Jane Deshevsky, a mom on the other side of 2 under 2. I'm still actively figuring all this out and bringing you perspectives from across the parenting spectrum. By the way, if you like what you hear, leave us a review or follow the podcast to help us keep growing. Let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast, Dawn.
Thanks. It's really exciting to be here.
Just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your family?
Sure. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I have been for probably about 23 years. I've been doing the support groups in the perinatal postpartum area for about 13 years now. Actually, it's 14 years.
How has your own experience with parenting shaped how you think about the groups that you're leading and creating for parents?
I think my own experience is that each child is really different, and there's no right way. There's 100% no right way. Even in a family, you might, for your first kid, be like, they slept great. For your second kid, you may be like, we had to do Ferber. And your third kid, you may have slept with them in your room until they were 3 years old. I just feel like creating a space where there's no shame or judgment related to any of the choices that you make in parenting, and that there's just support. Like I said, I've been doing this for 14 years and just seeing that everybody does something a different way. And in the end, it doesn't matter that much. What really matters is for the moms to feel really supported during this time of big transition.
Yeah, that's such an amazing point, because I think when you're in it, especially as a first-time parent, not speaking for all first-time parents, but I know I sort of felt like all those decisions matter so, so much. As you were getting started in this, what reconfirmed your belief that parents just really needed this space?
Myself was in a support group with my first and with the twins. And I think for the first time, those people really were a lifeline for me. I could have friends or relatives that obviously were parents, but to have someone who was in that same probably 2-month realm as me was huge. To be navigating, starting solid foods together, we're navigating this together, was a huge lifeline. It gave so much normalcy and just this feeling that I wasn't alone, or that other people were struggling with the same things as well.
I remember I was part of a support group as well, and having that feeling of, oh, people are sort of going through the exact same thing I'm going through, and really giving you perspective. What actually do you feel like, having seen parents go through this, makes such a difference about having that community of people really in the same phase as you are?
I think it's just that real, true, you're on the same page, you're living the same experience. You're literally hitting the point where your adrenaline runs out and you can't make it another day. You're hitting those points together. I just had a support group this morning, and one mom was like, my adrenaline's run out, and what am I doing with my life? And I've worked so hard to get to this point in my career, and now I'm like, do I even want to do this? I don't get to spend as much time with my kids and all of that. And there's 3 other women in the group that are feeling the exact same thing. And so I think sometimes it's nice to talk to someone who has some perspective, a year out from that position, but to really be able to connect with someone who's really in it, so you don't feel as guilty, as alone, not as self-judgmental, all of that. It makes a huge difference.
One of the things that sometimes makes people hesitant, for me prior to having a kid was not really like a share in a group of strangers kind of person. So if someone's feeling hesitant to
Mhm.
share with people they don't really know, how do you set up that
Right.
space so people actually do feel comfortable sharing?
I always set up the group with that dynamic that you can go to any group and try to say the things that you feel you should say or do the things that you feel like you should do. But that's not what really people want. And I think people can relate to the idea that when someone shares honestly, it really feels like a gift. It feels like
Mhm.
something you don't get in our society very often. And if someone is willing to say in a group, and an easy example for me to share when I'm starting my support groups is, for a first time moms group, it might be like, have I made a mistake? Was I really ready to become a mom? Like maybe I've made a mistake or I'm gonna
That's a
get a
familiar
divorce.
feeling. Mhm.
And as soon as someone says that in the group, there's at least four other women in the group that are like, me too. Thank you for sharing that because now I can share it too. And so I think just normalizing that everybody is having these feelings. Everybody is having something that they're scared of, what it means for them, what it means for their relationship, what it means about them as a mom or a person.
How should somebody think about what group might be right for them?
I think there might be some people who maybe like having a baby makes a person who might feel really introverted feel like then you have to become an extrovert because now you have this child that you're supposed to go
Mhm.
do things with and expose them to things. And so I think that is really hard for some people. Oh, I think showing up for a more intimate, longer group and knowing that obviously you're going to show up and you're going to be there and you're going to participate, but you can also just kind of sit back and receive. Or sometimes it's better for you to be like, oh, I'm just going to go to a fitness class where it's just moms, and or I'm going to go to a drop-in feeding group, maybe trying your foot in some situation and see how it feels before you commit to a longer term group. But I will say that people who wouldn't necessarily say they were support group type people will leave my groups and be like, that is the number one best thing I did for myself on my maternity leave because they've made all these friends.
Yeah, totally. I can attest to that too, especially because there is something just so different about that group of people just doing the exact same life phase as you. It just
Mhm.
like you can't compare it to
Yeah.
other advice because yeah, someone with a year out may have such valuable perspective and that is also really helpful, but it's not necessarily the same as being able to share tips in the moment of like, hey, my baby's on some sort of bottle or breastfeeding strike or
Totally.
whatever. What
Totally.
do I do
Yes.
here?
And even with it could be a group of first time moms. And it's amazing. They may think they don't know anything, but if someone's like, oh, I'm having like a feeding refusal or whatever, there a bunch of other moms have gone through the same thing. And so they get together and there's a ton of information. They know so much together.
So you have groups for expectant parents and new parents and
Mhm.
second time parents and all these different kind of flavors of parents and parenting journeys. Is there like a best time to join a group?
Depends on your personality or even just your comfort level in getting out of the house with your baby newly postpartum. I have people who know themselves and are literally like, they know they can't be home by themselves. They know they need to be in community. And so they'll come to the group before their baby's a week old. And people are always like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got out of the house. Good for you. And then I have people who maybe aren't ready to do that until their baby's 4 months old. I do think finding the community before your baby comes is super helpful because the thing that I think makes me feel really sad is when someone comes to me when I mean, at least they're coming and they're finding community, but they'll come and be like, I didn't even know this existed. And their baby is 4 months old and they've
Hmm.
gone through
Oh, they've gone
four
through the
months
worst parts.
worst parts by themselves. And then
Yeah.
they're like, oh my God, I found my people. So I do think for people who are especially for people who are expecting their first baby, just looking around and seeing what the community does offer. Sometimes places that do offer support groups for new moms offer support groups for pregnancy. And I do that so that someone can come and just check it out and make sure I'm a normal person and that they like my space and that it's easy to get in and out of.
I mean, I totally wish I'd done the expectant moms group. I was
Mhm.
part of a newborn and then a second time around. And I'm really curious about your perspective on this because I remember feeling like the newborn one, first time moms, newborns, everybody was like, I don't know, really in it, sharing what apps they were using to track every poop or whatever it was at the time. And the second time around, no one even talked about the infant. The only thing anyone ever talked about was the toddler. The infant didn't bother anybody, and the toddler was like, what do I do with this child? And so I'm really curious, how have you found the difference between expectant and new and second time?
It's like what you said to a T. The first time moms
It's not
is
just
like,
me.
how am I doing this? Am I getting it right? And then the second time moms, we literally, in the second time moms group that I did today, people were like, can you have someone come in who's an expert on toddlers and do a workshop for us?
What about the expectant parents?
I think for the expectant parents, really, it's a lot of just being able to connect with other people who are in the same phase and just ask a lot. There's so much anxiety and so much unknown when you're pregnant and for the first time. And you go to a doctor's appointment, you have this long list of questions, and you might not even get them all answered. So to be able to sit and talk about the things that aren't even necessarily medical, but they're just the things that are on your mind. It could be, how am I going to pick a pediatrician? Or what am I going to do in terms of childcare? Or how am I going to navigate work? And then the other thing that I think is really nice about being in a group like that is then you're bonded with a group of other women who they usually always stay in touch. They'll be like, oh, did you see this mom and baby yoga class? Let's go check that out together. And then they're cheering each other on when the babies come. It's really sweet to see the last person in the group who's expecting and everyone's so excited for her. It gives people who are brand new moms also a way to kind of feel like they can support each other, which is really sweet.
Really nice that thing you said where even if you feel like you don't know anything yet, you actually do know a lot. And even just the act of sharing what you're trying is such a helpful thing for other parents.
Yeah. Even in pregnancy.
Even
If
in
you ask a
pregnancy,
group
yeah.
of women who are coming to a pregnancy group, they all are like, my sister told me to use this app for tracking and this thing and that.
So if you've never been a part of any support group, I know we talked a little bit about this, but like practically speaking, what can you expect?
They're all a little bit different. The pregnancy one is a little bit more, I would say more information is delivered, but still a lot of support and sharing. And then for the new moms, it's a lot of checking in. Typically, a support group is going to allow each person to kind of check in individually what's going on and then be able to make connections within the group around that and then would follow into some kind of curriculum. The pregnancy might be a little bit more heavy into the curriculum because they're really wanting to learn and take things in. The new mom, there's still some curriculum there, obviously, because they're learning about sleep, you're learning about feeding, just like the common medical concerns that you have. But a lot of it is just me encouraging people to lean into what they feel is right. And what you feel is right 1 week could be totally different in 2 weeks. You may be like, I'm doing this, I'm trying this. This is the hill I'm going to die on. And then in 2 weeks, you're like, okay, my kid doesn't like that. And then the third group, the second time moms, there's definitely some curriculum and things like that that people typically want to talk about. But like you said, it's a lot of support around a growing family and managing a toddler and all the emotions that come with it and all the emotions that really come with. I think that that is one of the times where you realize how many triggers you have and how dysregulated you are. And it's a lot of,
especially with no sleep.
and then really kind of having to parent yourself to be able to parent a toddler. It's a really, really tough time. And so a lot of that is just talking about how difficult that is.
Have you seen the themes of what people talk about change over time?
I mean, definitely sleep, relationships, and that's not necessarily even with partners. It's family relationships and the dynamics that change. Sometimes that's disappointment in grandparents or other family members or partners. Feeding is obviously an issue. I do think that because I have done this for 14 years, sadly, I have seen how I think there's a lot more pressure on women and like the Instagram
Oh,
feed.
yeah.
And it really gets to a point where in a lot of groups, um, there'll be women who are like, I just have to take the social media off my phone because there is this pressure. You have to do this, this, and this right out of the gate, or your baby's never going to sleep. Or if you don't do this, this, and this, then they're not going to develop well. And like you need to be doing this and that. And I think that people have the best intentions, and obviously they want the best for their children. And so it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole on that and to get like overly focused on those things. And so I do think that that is something that has changed over time.
I think that's such a really important point, and it's so hard to navigate it because on the one hand, you are seeing people with social media and now I'm sure access to AI
Mhm.
and forums and whatever else going on, that people really do feel like they're also getting good ideas and good information there. And
Mhm.
then suddenly it can take a turn. And you actually made a really good point about this earlier, where it's like after all of these years watching this and seeing people do things in all these different ways, none of it really matters, even if it feels like it really, really matters in the moment.
Right.
So, any advice for people who are like trying to navigate that information overload?
I do think community is nice. It's nice to be in a group of people where someone is like, we're going to try this on this issue. And then another person's going to try this other thing. And another person's going to try this other thing. And then you see that every baby's different. And sometimes it
Hmm.
has nothing to do with what you're trying and nothing to do with who you are as a parent. Just babies are different. And so I think the community piece helps to add some real life experience into it. So it's not so rules based. Like if I follow these rules, this is going to happen.
What about on that front? How have you seen kind of groups come together and help, even with this? Every baby is different, and you just sort of have to keep trying things to see what works for your family.
I do think the community piece, because you're getting new ideas, you're getting the support, you're realizing that you're not alone, and really that there's nothing wrong with you. It's really nice
Hmm.
to have other women witness you and be like, you're a really good mom and you're doing a great job. And this just sucks.
Love that you also are running these groups for dads. We spend a lot of time talking about moms and the support that they need. Talk to me a little bit about dads and what you found in terms of them needing some space to talk about their transition into this life as well.
Yes. So I have a different therapist who does the dad's group. He specializes in early fatherhood, and he's fantastic. And so obviously I communicate with him a lot about the dad's groups that he runs. There's a couple things that he has shared that really have stuck with me. One is that women parent in community and men parent in isolation. Which is really sad, but it's really
Mhm.
true for the most part. Women can have a group of other women that they may be with for like 4 to 5 months that they really experience the challenges of early motherhood with. And dads are really navigating most of this alone. So it's really nice to have the dads together. I think the other thing is that it's really important for dads to feel important, for them to have something that they're really good at. Maybe they're the best person at a certain type of comforting or a certain type of
Mhm.
swaddling, but I do think that are not always, but usually it's easier for moms to soothe the babies. They're the ones who are typically the primary caregiver in the early months. And so there's that deeper connection, the deeper feeling
Mhm.
of comfort with the baby. And so a lot of times dads will be like, they don't like me. This baby does not like me. I come home from work and I hold them and all they do is cry. His perspective is that women have had a longer, in most cases, if they were the person who carried the baby and gave birth, but they've had like 9, 10 months to kind of adjust to this idea that they're the person who's becoming a mother. Whereas a lot of times for dads, it's just kind of like the baby is then born. And then that's the beginning of their adjustment period. So dads will, once they are in community, they really will connect with each other. They'll create chat groups and text each other or do meetups at different places together. I wish it was more of a norm for there to be dad's group.
we talked about, the biggest thing that you can get out of those groups is just the sense of normalizing and knowing you're not alone and that other people are also experiencing it. So that's super profound to hear that dads are parenting in isolation and are really missing
Mhm.
that connection. In terms of either moms or dads or couples or however you're coming to these groups, what do you think is important to get the most out of it?
I always encourage people to lean into their group. I will set people up in my groups with a text chain so that they can text.
Mhm.
One of the groups is like there's 4 of the women in the group that are doing sleep training this weekend. It's an older kid group. And I would like text each other in the middle of the night when you were like, it's been 3 minutes and I'm about to go in and I'm going to lose my mind or, whatever. And so I think leaning into all of the things that are offered and that you can get out of a group. So I usually do a text chain and then I encourage people after every group to go. There's a handful of restaurants that can accommodate everybody coming in with their strollers and
I wish there
pressure.
were more.
I know, right? There really aren't.
Yeah.
And so I always have the groups go out for lunch afterwards or to grab a bite to eat because I think as much as you can connect outside of the group with people, the better. Then you're building relationships that last like a lifetime. I just saw someone sent me photos of their kids and they do a holiday party every year and they do a cookie swap. These are relationships that really can last a lifetime.
Yeah. Such a magical part of it, right? That you can meet as
Mhm.
strangers and then you can have these lifelong relationships and really watch your kids grow up together. I mean, that is the village, right? That's the
Yeah.
dream. What do you see in terms of groups that really successfully transition from the more structured group to having more of those lifelong relationships?
I do think that it's people really valuing the relationships outside of the group. Like it is the staying in touch, the checking in.
What about just in general, having seen so many different parents, so many different experiences, having experienced it yourself, is there any advice you would share with new parents?
Probably I really would recommend people. I mean, I always tell people in my pregnancy group, if my schedule doesn't work for you, I will help you find a support group.
Mm.
I think finding a community is huge. It's huge. And then the other thing I would say is resources, asking for help. I know it's really hard for a lot of people to ask for help, but people who come to my group with their 3rd kid and have a lot of that parenting wisdom are like, the thing I've done differently this time is I ask for help.
I spoke to someone too who said that one of the ways that they actually built community was by asking for help, right? Because
Mhm.
by being more vocal about that, people showed up and then they could build a relationship and people want to help. And so it feels uncomfortable at first, maybe, certainly for some people, but that is one of the paths to building the village as well.
Yeah. And you do have like some built-in things, like think your pediatrician, you're going to see your pediatrician a ton.
Mhm.
And realizing and kind of reframing that those people are a part of your village. A lot
Yeah.
of pediatricians now have lactation consultants or other kinds of services available. Sometimes if people have a faith-based community or their coworkers.
And I think that brings me to the next question, which is just obviously in the Boston area, there's Gather Well, and you're helping create that community. In other places, there's other groups. But if you feel like you're not able to find something in your community, certainly you can look at that network of
Mhm.
pediatricians and OBs and all of that. But are there other things that you can do or that you'd recommend for moms who are feeling like they don't know where to turn?
You may think there's nothing out there, but I would start by going to like a local area Facebook group. Libraries will often have resources, and then also asking your OB or your pediatrician. And then, other than that, on Instagram, you can find Postpartum Support International. They do a lot of free online support groups for dads, for military parents, for same-sex couples, for single parents. There's all types of support groups on there.
That's a good tip. Okay, so switching tack, supported by a upcoming service called the Starter Set, which is helping parents try to sort through all of the noise of what they need, what they don't need, by creating personalized recommendations. So, as a mom yourself, as a group founder, are there any products or services or things that you really swear by for parents?
I think they're great. Anything that helps your baby sleep a little bit more. Um,
Yeah.
but I do think swaddles are great. I think those giant yoga balls that you can bouncier baby on to help soothe them and settle them are great. I think, especially for second time mom, baby carriers are great. Not everybody who's a first time mom is into the baby carrier, but if you have a baby that really likes to be on your body all the time and you just are like, oh my gosh, I got to get off the couch, having a good baby carrier, I think, is a great one. I think the bouncy chairs are great. The soothing and settling stuff, I feel like, is good for the baby and good for the mom and the dad.
Absolutely. Just to have a little bit, free hands, ability to do something.
Yeah.
It's super important. What about things that you feel like sometimes, especially new parents, gravitate towards that maybe isn't as necessary?
Like, there's not something that necessarily I would be like, that's not a great product, because I think every baby is really different and each parent is different. So whatever it is you get, whatever it is you're registering for, there's also like an emotional piece to it, right? Like you're like, oh, okay, I want to register for this because this is what I think it's going to offer me, or, whatever. Like you just kind of don't know, but to feel like you've checked the boxes and that makes you feel like you're prepared as a mother or father, that's important. If you're registering, you don't have to register right away for a high chair or the things that are the older kids stuff, like the basics that make you feel safe and make you feel like you have a home that your baby's coming home to, that they can be taken care of, and if their health and safety is taken care of, great. But other stuff, you don't know how your baby's going to sleep or how they're going to eat or all this other kind of stuff. So you can wait on some of those things.
I don't know. I didn't grow up with little brothers and sisters or a lot of babies in my life. So I remember when I had my first child, being really shocked by how little they could do for how long.
Right.
And thinking like, why were people suggesting I put a high chair on the registry? Or, these other things like you mentioned that you actually are not going to use for a very long time. And by the time you do use them, you may have a totally different idea of what you want at that point. What about if you had to tell someone one thing to take away from this conversation, what would you want it to be?
I think that finding your community really matters. Yeah, it really does matter. It makes a huge difference to someone's postpartum experience, is if they're isolated and alone, or if they have a community of people that they feel like that they can reach out to with hilarious things and hard things and, questions, all of it.
Absolutely. And, that group that's going through it with you at the same time will also be up at 3 a.m.
100%.
Thank you so much for sharing all this. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a review or follow the podcast to stay up to date on new episodes. Know someone else who could use the episode? Please pass it on. Interested to hear more or get in touch with Dawn? Reach out via her website, gatherwellbydawn.com, or via Instagram at gatherwellbydawn. Links in the episode description. Have topics you'd like us to cover? Find us on Instagram at The Starter Set, or reach out via info@thestarterset. Thank you for listening.